Tuesday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Note for May the 16th. I actually posted the blog yesterday and never got around to recording the video. It's actually because it's my first day back to work after 4 or 5 days off, and just never really got around to it with everything else that I actually had to do. But one of the stories that came out from late last week is we now officially have our Final Four in the NHL a day after we now have the Final Four in the NBA, and it concerns one of the teams that was out of the playoff race a few weeks left in the regular season. That would be the Ottawa Senators. Now the Senators are currently up for sale and have been honestly for a little over a year. Previous owner Eugene Melnick bought the franchise back in 2003, and passed away back in March of last year. When he bought the franchise back in 2003, it was for 130 mil Canadian, and now we're going to see a scenario where there's three potential groups led by pretty much A-list celebrities here, going to be bidding more than upwards of 200 million over the franchise's current value of 800 million Canadian. Those three groups, in no particular order, would be led by would be Ryan, what I'm going to call the Ryan Reynolds group, the Weekend group, and the Snoop group. Reynolds was a consortium for a group that included the Remington Group, which is a leader in philanthropy consulting, and his offer would have come in at around $1 billion. But reportedly on Thursday, they asked the NHL for a kind of an exclusive window to complete the deal, but the NHL said no, and apparently Reynolds, who was born in Vancouver, and as we all know, the film megastar, the Wrexham Soccer Club owner over in England, he easily would have been the highest profile owner or even minority owner in the NHL. This would have actually been bigger than all the damage to the Rangers that James Dolan's done over the year, or when Wayne Gretzky himself owned a portion of the Phoenix Coyotes when they were still known as the Phoenix Coyotes. But now apparently that deal has kind of come off with the NHL denying the exclusive window. The other two groups, one is actually with The Weeknd, who we all know is from Canada. His real name is Abel Tesfaye, and he grew up a hockey fan in Toronto. His group is primarily backed by Canadian billionaires Mike and Jeff Kimmel, and their offer is reportedly around 900 million Canadian, which again, 100 million over the asking price. The last one out there that seems to be getting the most media coverage, however, is the one that's led by Calvin Brodus, who everybody knows as Snoop Dogg, and of course, the one person that a lot of people are not talking about that's reported involved with this group is Dwayne Johnson, who everyone knows as The Rock. Their group is primarily backed by California businessman Nico Sparks. He's the chief technical officer of Pixel Lime, which is an LA-based AI and immersive technology company. Now, Snoop went on ESPN last week talking with one of their morning shows and said his intentions were why he wants in on this. Snoop is a big hockey fan. Snoop has actually done a lot of good to help kind of build the image in regards to the culture with inner city or urban culture, things of that nature, far beyond just showing up at a couple of games and wearing a couple of cool looking jerseys. Primarily with him being out in LA, naturally he's going to facilitate himself and whoever he's with, to be at LA Kings games wearing the black and silver. And it doesn't actually help that the Kings were one of the better teams in the NHL this year, and a very, very quick turnaround for them, and certainly be a team that's marketable enough to kind of get behind. But Snoop, who I sometimes may actually just refer to here as Brodus out of respect. But Brodus has actually said that he wants hockey to start appealing to people who look like him. And that statement goes a lot farther than a lot of people want to give anybody credit for. It doesn't hurt that we're actually, that Quentin Byfield is African American, or I should say African Canadian, and has become one of the better core members of the LA Kings after being drafted second overall just a couple of years ago. We see right now with the Florida Panthers going on that, and I'm sorry, his name is eluding me as I try to look it up here at the moment. But also had a key goal in one of their games, knocking out not only Anthony Duclair. It was, and I didn't even bother to look it up. It just came to me. Duclair's 27. He's been bounced around some of the teams in the league, and also if you watch the broadcast on TBS and TNT, Anson Carter does a fantastic job with his breakdown, diagnosis, everything of that nature. We've actually seen who were just unfortunately knocked out last night, and I say unfortunate just because it's not that I wanted to see them go ahead of Dallas, but the Seattle Kraken to get knocked out because how historic would have been, a team in their second year going up against a team in their sixth year in the Western Conference Finals. But the Kraken actually, their radio play-by-play announcer Everett Fitzhugh is the first African American heritage announcer, primary announcer in NHL history. So it's something that the game is starting to grow. It's starting to get into areas that you didn't normally expect to see before. We're also seeing probably some of the best diversity we've ever seen in the NHL, and the potential of the Weekend or Snoop growing the game beyond that is a very, very interesting possibility. Now, Ryan Reynolds would be a very cool idea. I think the Snoop aspect, personally, and there's no animosity amongst any of these whatsoever. Personally, I think that the Weekend could make them profitable. I think in terms of if Brodus's group, Brodus, Johnson, and I just said his name, Sparks. If their group purchased it, it would be something that it would be. I don't want to say social justice or social awareness or anything like that, but it would definitely be something that could maybe open up the game to masses a little bit more. Although you would actually have, two high-profile Hollywood U.S. type celebrities owning a Canadian team. But I think honestly the NHL may have missed out with not giving Reynolds and his group the opportunity to go forward and flat out buy it, just because I think that one could be the most stable of the three groups. But again, time will tell. We never know. Any one of these three, they can't really go wrong, considering some of the ownership groups we've actually got in the NHL. Right now we've got that fiasco going on with Arizona that I've talked about time and time again. Although their primary owner is the first Latino primary owner in the NHL. Considering with what happened with them, their ownership, Andrew Barroway was the former majority owner, and then he was essentially forced out and banned indefinitely from the NHL after domestic assault. And Alex Marulio, again, first Latino heritage owner primary owner in league history. We actually see what again has happened with the Rangers over the years with James Dolan. We've seen Um, and an ownership change could be exactly what the Senators need, because typically when a team gets an ownership change or an identity, sometimes an identity change comes with it. The St. Louis Blues, my personal favorites, um, were very they were middle of the road when the Checketts family owned them, and then when Tom Stillman came in and I'm sorry, not Tom Stillman. Um, when their new ownership group, I'm sorry, it was Tom Stillman. I was actually getting him confused with Tom Calhoun, who's the um, announcer at within the arena at Enterprise Center. When Stillman came in, he kind of first of the people thought this wasn't going to be the most appeasing idea because he got rid of the very popular Navy kind of oval. I'm sorry, the Navy circular roundel arch jersey, kind of getting that away from the Checketts ownership group. But within a few short years, he had the Blues back to prominence, got them a Stanley Cup, even though they're now in rebuild mode. Um, we saw what's happened with the New York Islanders after John Ledecky purchased the franchise 5 or 6, 7 years, or took majority ownership of the franchise a few years ago with the now late Charles Wang, where the Islanders got a new building finally built, so they finally got that entire Barclays Center, Nassau Coliseum fiasco resolved. The Islanders went to a pair of Eastern Conference Finals. Got beat by Tampa both years. We saw what happened with the Pittsburgh Penguins, 10 or 15 years ago, where they were on the verge of bankruptcy. They land Sidney Crosby, they get Evgeny Malkin, and they in turn win some Stanley Cups, become a little bit of a dynasty of their own. So this is something that could definitely benefit the Ottawa franchise. And the best thing about any of these three groups is there is no talk in any aspect of moving the team out of Ottawa has immediately been shut down publicly. The Canadian Tire Center, formerly known as the Coral Center when it first opened in '96, and also Scotiabank Place. 96, you figure it's coming up on 30 years that arena's been open here, but it's still a quality arena, and there's not really a whole lot of other markets you can move them to in Canada. I don't think Halifax would be able to support an NHL team. You're not going to get somebody back in Quebec City, possibly Saskatchewan, but that remains to be seen. So all of your major markets in Canada, you've got teams in Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg. You've got the Battle of Alberta, so you've got the two biggest cities for tourists in that part of the area. You've got Vancouver, and that's Edmonton and Calgary. So there's really not a whole lot of other places you could put them, and Ottawa's a very strong metropolitan city, and especially if it's Canada's game, you want to put a team in Canada's capital. So that's where I think the Weekend might actually have a little bit of an edge, being an Ontario kid himself, kind of growing up, and he might have been more of a Leafs fan than a Sens fan, but he certainly knows who the Sens were. May have gone to some of their games. There's not a ton of distance between Toronto and the Canada area where the Senators call home. Reynolds, again, born in Vancouver, would be appealing. But this is something where, especially with the youth involved of the Senators franchise, and especially all the good young talent that they have, just think about their roster here for a moment. Brady Tkachuk, their captain, is 23. Tim Stützle is 21. You've got Claude Giroux, 35. He's only got a couple of years left in him. When Giroux leaves, their other captain right now is Thomas Chabot. One of their original draft picks is 26. You've got Drake Batherson, 25. Very good young player. Alex DeBrincat, who came over in that surprising deal at the deadline last year, is 25 from the Chicago Blackhawks. Although Shabbat ended the season on injured reserve, and then also the one move that caught a lot of people off guard was the acquisition of Jacob Chitrin from Arizona, who's 25. But Chitrin also ended the season on injured reserve after injuring his hamstring late in March, right when the Senators were trying to make their playoff push and came up short. But again, a lot of good young talent there. Brady Tkachuk's been the captain since 2021. Their head coach DJ Smith has got this team going in the right direction. General manager Pierre Dorian has got the team going in the right direction. The new ownership group can only help this team progress forward. Just like when the Coyotes finally get their arena situation figured out, whether it's in Tempe and they get something officially set in stone there, and get an agreement and can maybe start breaking ground, or if it's something that the ownership group has to get them to Houston or San Antonio or Kansas City or wherever it might be. That's actually going to start to see the Coyote franchise come up. So an ownership change a lot of the times might be the catalyst to jump starting everything else, because the arena's in place, the roster's in place, but the uncertainty at the top is only going to trickle down and cause this to get a little bit better. So let me know what you guys think. Which of your three choices would you prefer at the top here? Number on 1, 2, 3, if you'd like. Do you actually think the Arizona situation now starts to go a different direction? What do you think happens there? But Mike and I will be back with you guys with a special guest that has not appeared on our show, and we'll actually broadcast that on social media here a little later on this week. But we'll be live Saturday night, and then we'll also be live for a special roast of me, which Mike caught me off guard with last week, on the 27th, Memorial Day weekend. So we hope that you'll join us then. Everybody take care, and I'll see you later on this week.